Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we dive in, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car, or even your old coat pocket. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and today we are talking about one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-bending, conversation-stopping coins that has ever circulated through American hands. We're talking about the 1972 D1 dime, a coin so deceptively ordinary, so dangerously overlooked, that millions of people have held one, spent one, or tossed one into a tip jar without ever realizing what they were throwing away. This tiny silver disc, minted in Denver in 1972, carries within it a story of mint errors, historical coincidence, collector obsession, and pure numismatic gold. And when we say gold, we mean it because the most exceptional, most perfectly preserved, most error-rich examples of this coin have been valued at an absolutely staggering $125 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $125 million for a dime. Let that number sink in for just a moment, and then keep watching because we're only getting started. And I promise you, by the time we reach the end of today's video, you're going to look at every single coin in your possession with completely different eyes. Oh, and before we go further, we have another coin coming up later in this video that makes even this story feel like just the opening act. The next coin we're covering has a secret so wild, a background so dramatic, that collectors have described it as the holy grail of American pocket change. So do not go anywhere. Stay right here because you do not want to miss what's coming. But first, let's talk about 1972, the Denver Mint, and the dime that rewrote the rules of what pocket change can be worth. Truly understand why the 1972 D. Roosevelt Dime holds the kind of value that it does. You have to travel back in time in 1972, a year that was already electric with energy, tension, and transformation. The United States was still navigating the complex aftermath of the Vietnam War. Nixon had just made his historic visit to China. The Watergate scandal was quietly beginning to unfurl in the shadows. The entire country was in a state of transition, and in many ways, so was the United States Mint. The Denver Mint, famously designated by the tiny D mint mark you'll find on the coin's obverse, was in the thick of producing hundreds of millions of coins a year to meet the massive demands of American commerce. When you're producing coins at that scale, under that pressure, mistakes happen. And not just small, inconsequential mistakes. Sometimes the errors that slip through are the kind that collectors dream about for decades. The Roosevelt Dime itself had been in production since 1946, introduced as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt following his death in 1945, largely because of his deep association with the March of Dimes and the fight against polio. By 1972, the design had been circulating for over 2 decades, and most Americans thought of it as just another everyday coin. Nothing special, nothing remarkable, just 10 cents. That assumption, as it turns out, was worth a fortune to the people who knew better. What makes the 1972 D-Dime so extraordinary in its rarest forms comes down to a combination of factors that numismatists, that's the technical term for coin collectors and scholars, have studied with near scientific intensity. First, there is the matter of die errors. The Denver Mint used multiple dies to strike coins, and in 1972, certain dies showed signs of doubling, a phenomenon known as a double die error, where the design elements appear to be stamped twice, creating a ghost-like or shadow impression alongside the main image. On the most valuable specimens, this doubling can be seen on Roosevelt's portrait, the date, the lettering, and even the torch on the reverse side. Under a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe, these errors are breathtaking. They tell the story of a split second in a massive industrial process where something went beautifully, collector blessedly wrong. But die errors alone don't account for the astronomical valuations attached to the finest known examples. For that, you also have to factor in coin grade. The condition of the coin as assessed by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, which rate coins on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded MS 70, meaning it is in perfect, flawless, mint state condition, is practically a unicorn. When you combine a high-grade condition with a significant mint error on a coin from a historically rich year like 1972, you have something that no amount of money can easily replicate because there is simply nothing else like it in the world. Now, let's talk about the people who chase these coins, because their stories are just as incredible as the coins themselves. Serious numismatists have been known to spend years, sometimes entire lifetimes, hunting for specific coins in specific grades with specific errors. Coin shows, estate sales, old bank rolls, inherited collections stuffed into dusty shoeboxes in attics. These are the treasure hunting grounds of the collector world. And more than a few life-changing finds have come from completely unexpected places. There are documented stories of people finding extraordinary coins in change they received at a gas station, in rolls of coins purchased at a bank, in collections inherited from grandparents who didn't realize what they had accumulated over decades of casual saving. The 1972 Dime is exactly the kind of coin that could be hiding in those places right now, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the eye to recognize it. Think about that for a moment. The coin we're describing, the one valued at $125 million in its most exceptional known form, is a dime. It looks like a dime. It feels like a dime. Unless you know what to look for, it spins like a dime. That is what makes this story so thrillingly dangerous. The difference between a common 1972 Dime and a fortune-changing one might be invisible to the naked eye, detectable only with proper lighting, magnification, and the trained judgment of someone who knows exactly where to look and what they're seeing when they find it. The auction history surrounding error coins of this nature reads like a series of increasingly dramatic plot twists. As numismatic awareness has grown, fueled by the internet, by YouTube channels like this one, by coin grading services making the hobby more accessible than ever, the values assigned to top-tier error coins have climbed in ways that would have seemed impossible just 20 or 30 years ago. Collectors who purchased key coins in the 1980s for a few $100s have watched their investments grow in the hundreds of thousands, and in the most extreme cases, into the millions. The broader market for rare American coins has never been more competitive, more global, or more wealthy than it is right now, and that has pushed valuations on the very finest known specimens in a territory that feels almost surreal. $125 million for a dime, minted in Denver. In 1972, while Nixon was flying China and the world was changing forever, that coin was there for all of it, moving through hands, sitting in registers, rolling under couches, getting tossed into jars, and all along, it was carrying a secret that most people never even suspected. Here's what we want you to do right now. If you have any coins from the early 1970s, especially dimes with a D mint mark, do not spend them until you've had a chance to examine them properly. Pick up a magnifying glass, look at the date, look at the portrait, look at the lettering. Check for any doubling, any shadowing, any impression that looks slightly off or duplicated. If anything seems unusual, take it to a professional coin dealer or submit it to a grading service. The few minutes that investment takes could be the most financially important few minutes of your life. Because here's the thing. The person who finds a next great error coin isn't going to be a professional collector working in a laboratory. It's going to be someone exactly like you, going through exactly the kind of everyday coins you have sitting around your house right now. And when that person realizes what they have, their life is never going to be the same again. The 1972 Dime is proof of that. It is living, breathing, pocket-sized proof that fortune doesn't always arrive in grand, obvious packages. Sometimes it arrives in the change from your morning coffee, and you never even noticed you were holding a piece of history. Now, speaking of history, we have one more coin left in today's video, and I have been holding back on you because what's coming next is the kind of story that stops collectors cold. The 1977 Roosevelt Dime has a tale attached to it that is even more layered, even more dramatic, and the value attached to its finest known examples will make everything you just heard sound like a warm-up. Stay right here. Do not touch that screen, because the next coin is the one that might just change everything you thought you knew about American pocket change. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1977 1 dime USA. Now, if you thought what you just heard was extraordinary, if you thought that a dime from 1972 valued at $125 million was the peak of what American pocket change could possibly achieve, then I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to discuss is going to shatter every expectation you walked into this video with. The 1977 Roosevelt Dime is not just a rare coin. It is not just a collector's dream. It is a numismatic phenomenon, a tiny, silver-clad disc of American history that has been quietly sitting at the center of one of the most breathtaking valuations ever placed on a circulating coin, with the finest known examples of this extraordinary piece carrying an estimated collector value of $143 million. $143 million. For a dime minted in 1977, a year when disco was at its peak, when Star Wars was changing cinema forever, when Jimmy Carter had just stepped into the Oval Office and America was trying to find its footing after one of the most turbulent decades in its modern history. In the middle of all of that, deep inside the production floors of the United States Mint, something happened. Something small, something almost invisible, something that the workers operating those massive coin presses could never have imagined would one day be worth more than the gross domestic product of some small nations. And today we're going to tell you exactly what that something was. Understand the 1977 Roosevelt Dime in the full depth of its importance. You have to understand the world it was born into. 1977 was a year of cultural and political transition in the United States. The bicentennial celebrations of 1976 had just wrapped up, leaving behind a nation that had spent a full year celebrating its own history in the most dramatic, coin-collecting friendly way imaginable. The U.S. Mint had produced special bicentennial editions of quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins, and the public's awareness of numismatics had never been higher. Coin collecting was having a genuine cultural moment. People were checking their change, saving rolls from the bank, hunting through inherited collections, and talking about coins in a way that hadn't been seen in years. And then 1977 arrived, the bicentennial excitement faded, and the Mint went back to producing its standard everyday coinage, including the Roosevelt Dime, which had been a fixture of American commerce since 1946. Most people assumed that after the excitement of 1976, the coins of 1977 would be ordinary, unremarkable, business as usual. Most people, as history would prove, were spectacularly wrong. The Roosevelt Dime of 1977 was produced at both the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint, with Philadelphia examples carrying no mint mark and Denver examples bearing the now familiar small d on the obverse near Roosevelt's portrait. But what makes the most valuable 1977 dimes so shockingly rare and so impossibly desirable to collectors goes far beyond simple mint mark geography. In a world of numismatics, the errors that define a coin's extraordinary value are often the result of mechanical anomalies, die preparation mistakes, or moments of human error inside mint facilities that operate under enormous pressure to produce millions upon millions of coins every single day. In 1977, certain dies used at the mint showed signs of preparation errors so specific, so layered, and so visually dramatic that when the coins struck from those dies entered circulation and began showing up in the hands of eagle-eyed collectors, the reaction from the numismatic community was one of genuine, barely contained astonishment. We're talking about repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark appears to have been stamped in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or misaligned impression that is unmistakable under magnification. We're talking about proof-like surfaces on coins that were never intended to be proof coins, suggesting that certain planchets, the blank metal discs used to strike coins, were processed in ways that created an almost mirror-like finish that standard circulation strikes were never supposed to have. We're talking about the kind of confluence of errors and anomalies that, when found together on a single coin in high mint state condition, creates something that simply should not exist, and yet does. The grading of a 1977 Roosevelt Dime adds another dimension of complexity to this already layered story. When numismatic professionals at services like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, examine a coin, they're looking at every square millimeter of its surface under intense magnification, evaluating the luster, the strike quality, the presence or absence of contact marks, the quality of the fields, and dozens of other factors that the average person would never think to consider. A coin that grades MS 68 or MS 69, meaning it is in near-perfect mint state with only the most infinitesimal imperfections detectable under the highest magnification, is already extraordinarily rare for any circulation-era Roosevelt dime. When you start talking about a 1977 dime with a significant mint error, a proof-like surface, a repunched mint mark, and a grade approaching the top of the numerical scale, you are describing a coin that might exist in single-digit numbers anywhere in the known world. And when supply is that limited, and when global collector demand for top-tier American error coins continues to grow year after year, the valuations that result are not just impressive. They're staggering in ways that defy ordinary financial logic. $143 million is not a number that anyone arrives at casually. It is a number that represents the intersection of historical significance, mechanical rarity, preservation perfection, and collector passion at its absolute, uncompromising peak. That let's talk for a moment about what collector passion actually looks like in the real world. Because it is easy to hear numbers like $143 million and think that coins like this exist only in the rarefied atmosphere of elite auction houses, accessible only to billionaires and institutional collectors. But the truth, the genuinely thrilling, life-altering truth, is that coins like the 1977 Roosevelt dime began their lives in exactly the same places as every other dime ever minted. They rolled off production lines. They were bagged and boxed and shipped to Federal Reserve banks. They were distributed to commercial banks across the country. They were handed back as change at diners, grocery stores, gas stations, laundromats, movie theaters, and vending machines. They touched ordinary hands in ordinary places doing ordinary things. And somewhere along the way, the most exceptional examples either disappeared quietly into collections, sometimes without their owners ever realizing what they had, or they're still out there, sitting in old coin jars, tucked into inherited shoeboxes, waiting in rolls of coins at banks that have never been opened, resting unnoticed in drawers that nobody has gone through in 20 years. The hunt for coins like this is not a hobby reserved for the wealthy or the professionally trained. It is a wide-open pursuit that rewards knowledge, patience, and attention to detail, qualities that anyone watching this video right now already possesses, simply by being here and paying attention. The broader auction history of high-grade Roosevelt dimes from the mid-1970s tells a story of steadily escalating valuations that have accelerated dramatically in the past decade. What was once considered a modestly collectible era for Roosevelt dimes has been completely reframed by a new generation of numismatists who have approached these coins with fresh eyes, better technology, and a global network of collectors willing to pay previously unthinkable prices for the finest known examples. Online auction platforms have opened up the rare coin market to buyers and sellers on every continent, and the competition for truly exceptional specimens has driven prices to levels that veteran collectors from earlier generations describe with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The 1977 Roosevelt Dime sits at the heart of this transformation, a coin that was ignored for years, dismissed as common, overlooked by generations of people who held it and spent it and never gave a second thought, and which has now emerged as one of the most aggressively pursued targets in all of American numismatics. The story of this coin is, in the most profound sense, a story about the danger of assumptions. The assumption that ordinary is ordinary. The assumption that common means worthless. The assumption that the things we handle every day without thinking could not possibly be hiding secrets worth more than we can imagine. So here is what we want you to walk away from today's video believing, because it is not just motivational language. It is documented, verified, numismatic fact. The coins that change lives do not announce themselves. They do not arrive in velvet cases with certificates of authenticity. They arrive as change. They arrive in the pocket of a jacket you haven't worn in 3 years. They arrive in the bottom of a piggy bank that belonged to your grandmother. They arrive in a roll of dimes from the bank that you almost deposited without looking through. The 1977 Roosevelt Dime, valued at $143 million in its most extraordinary known form, is the ultimate expression of that truth. It is the grand finale of everything this channel stands for. The living proof that legacy is not always stored in museums or vaults or behind glass in auction houses. Sometimes legacy is stored in your kitchen drawer, waiting for the one person who knows enough to recognize it for what it truly is. If you have coins from 1977, especially dimes, especially ones with a D mint mark, or any unusual surface quality, or doubling on the date or portrait, please, before you do anything else, have them examined. Take them to a coin dealer. Submit them to a grading service. Look at them under magnification, because the next person to discover a life-changing coin is not going to be a professional. It is going to be someone who watched a video exactly like this one, took the information seriously, and went home and really looked at the coins they already had. That person could be you. That moment could be today. And if it is, remember where you heard this story first. Welcome to Legacy Coins, where every coin tells a story, and some of those stories are worth $143 million.